All right, 97.7 Outlaw Radio FM listeners, you already know what time it is, and right here, right now, we actually got a special guest on the radio station airwaves. And I know once I say this name, a lot of individuals are going to jump out of their seat and going to bring them back to a time where life was much simpler for everybody, man. We got the one and only Phil Guerrero, also known as PJ Fresh Phil of YTV's The Zone, right here, right now on the line, man. How are you doing this evening?
I'm amazing, man. DJ Immortal. I never thought this day would come.
I gotta say, neither did I, man. If I could go back and tell my, 8-year-old self that you're gonna interview this man that you're watching, I would probably laugh at you and be like, stop interrupting my cartoons.
8 years old. So what were you watching? What shows were you saying at 8?
I would say around then, I for some reason I enjoyed Breaker High and I liked watching the Power Rangers.
Breaker High. That's Ryan Gosling, hey?
It definitely was an awesome show. I've been trying to track down some of those older episodes, man, but some of those older shows that were on YTV at the time are trying to find a needle in a haystack. You can search the internet sometimes, and you got to search through archives just to find a 2-minute clip. It's ridiculous.
Oh my God! Yeah, you know what? It's kind of too bad. No one thought to archive 90s television. You know what I mean? It's not like it's old films from the 1920s. But I'll tell you, if you didn't keep them around on tape somewhere, then it's really up to you guys and your VHS tapes, your found footage out there for stuff like that. And even for stuff I used to do.
And I gotta say as well, just while we're on the topic of that, I found that there's a site called TV Ontario, man. It's an Ontario archive, and they have so much amazing footage of not only YTV, but City TV back in the day and Global Television. I don't know how they get their hands on stuff like this, but they definitely are a Canadian historical archive.
Now, you're talking about Retro Ontario?
Retro Ontario, yeah.
Yeah, that's my buddy Ed.
Well, I gotta say, definitely shout out to Ed, man, because he brings back a lot of memories for a lot of people, including myself.
For sure, he's a great guy. He's brilliant. He sees the importance of keeping that stuff. He seeks out that footage. He's trying to find all those old, and we call them data cam tapes. They look like old data tapes from the 80s, and a ton of stuff. And my stuff was on those. We always talk about the library of YTV. I remember it was a tape library just full of stuff, of all the old YTV productions as well. And apparently it's somewhere in a warehouse. And you know what I mean? And I'm hoping that stuff gets archived.
I gotta say, I definitely agree as well, and hopefully they can find this warehouse and get everything kind of archived, like you said, uploaded and kind of preserved as well, man, because that's the very beginning of children's television, man. You know what I mean? There was not a station like that for its time. There was no station that every kid could just run home and watch from beginning right to the end of the day and actually be entertained.
Yeah, that was the first, man. You're talking about the late 80s, where I remember where I was from in Toronto, it was Channel 25, and I remember thinking, Channel 25, it's so high up on the dial. Will anyone even know that this channel exists? Do you know what I mean? Pre-internet, there wasn't much out there. There was television, magazines, and radio. You know what I'm saying? So, yeah, and the other thing is, at the time, you just didn't think. You didn't think about the world that we'd end up living in, right now, with just everything, on YouTube and phones, and do you know what I mean? When we were making those shows, we were thinking, well, it's going to air once, and that's it. You know what I mean? There was no thought into, someone will want to see this in 30 years. No one was thinking that at all.
And just speaking of back in those days, man, the one thing I have to ask, and I know you probably answered this every single interview, but I have to ask just for my listeners that might not have heard these interviews. As we all know, you were on YTV's The Zone, and I believe as well you had auditions for other programs before that, but I have to ask, how did you originally get involved with YTV from the very beginning? How did those opportunities arise for you?
Well, I wanted to meet chicks, and I'm kidding. Sorry.
It's all good, trust me.
Honestly, You know, when I was a little kid, I'd watch TV, and I don't know, I grew up on television, you know, I grew up in the 70s, and I got that beautiful time in television where, like, you know, in the world, it was kind of, I'm going to go deep here, it was sort of right after the Vietnam War, so, you know, entertainment and television was super light, man. It was like laugh. Like everything was kind of comedy. So I was watching Good Times and Welcome Back Kotter and like just all these fun kind of. So I was sort of brought up and was a product, like not so much latchkey kids like you guys were, but you know, I grew up with that stuff, and I don't know. I was related to it. I always thought I could do it, and I guess I just needed a chance. You know, I never did any kind of drama classes or any of that in high school or school. You know, I was raised by middle class, like immigrant parents, so they wanted me to go be a lawyer. Do you know what I mean? But I just, you know, through a fluky set of events, I had a best friend in private school, which later I got kicked out of. That's a different story. But he was in television. He did commercials and stuff like that, and he eventually just didn't like the business. It just wasn't for him. I remember he said, like, he'd hate being out, like, on the street with the microphone and everyone staring, and me, I didn't care. So he got me an audition at YTV, and I actually didn't get the job I was auditioning for, and they gave me a chance to do something else, and I worked for them half a year in high school, went away to university, flunked out of there too, and came back. I was about to tell my parents I wasn't going to go back to school and suffer their wrath. But YTV called up again. I auditioned for a couple of things. One show got canceled. The other thing, they gave me Tarzan Dan. It was a countdown show, but they were doing you know, a version of The Zone during the day for really young kids, and they thought to try it out in the afternoons, and I would split it with this guy named Gord the PJ Man, and that's what it was. My first contract was like three days out of the week. And then Gord the PJ Man would do 2 days out of the week. And he'd also do the younger kid stuff. So that's really how it started. And I'll tell you, man, like, I had a contract every year for 11 years. And who knew, honestly, like, what a crazy, you know, I couldn't tell you how to make it happen. But how do you get into television? At all? I don't know. You know, I could just tell you what happened with me. And it's a crazy set of circumstances that led me to that gig. I could have been fired after the first year. I almost was.
And I gotta say as well, if I'm not mistaken, the one show that you auditioned for that went to Tarzan Dan was actually the hit list. Am I correct on that one?
That's right. It was the hit list. And they hired Dan. And he had a great career over there. That show went on forever.
I gotta say, I used to love watching the Hit List, man, when I was young and growing up, and even into my teens, man. Like, that show was extraordinary. There's still some people today, I'm telling you, Phil, that if you bring up the Hit List, they'll be like, what is the Hit List? And it's like, wait, sit down, let me tell you a story about one of the greatest countdown shows ever. Like, I loved that show, and I actually got the opportunity to watch the last episode, and I'm gonna say, in the middle of my teenage years, I actually shed a tear to see that show gone, because it was a staple of my childhood.
Yeah, you know, it's too bad, but you know what? You guys grew up too, in a sense, and yeah, you know, countdown video shows. It really, you know, when you remember countdown video shows, you remember Tarzan Dan and what a great show it is. Really, you're remembering a time in your life when, man, I got to tell you, when you're a kid, it's great because, you know, your mom's making your food. You know, you don't have a cell phone bill to worry about. And really, that's a lot of it. And life was a lot simpler. There was that internet. You know what I'm saying? And yeah, the amount of time you spend looking at your phone and all that, it's just times are very different. A lot simpler. You know, there was time to go outside and play baseball or street hockey and stuff like that. You know what I mean?
And of course, during your time on The Zone, I remember this very vividly as well, man, that you actually had a phenomenal sidekick that was actually put together very creatively as well by the name of Snit. I was wondering if you can actually tell our listeners a bit more about your trusty sidekick. And of course, what was it like just working behind the scenes with the man behind Snit as well?
Okay, so I I got to tell you, I hated the idea of working with Snit when they first introduced it to me. You have to understand. Okay, I was in my 20s, working for a kids show. I always felt like a little boy that wanted to grow up. And I worked with the Gross, and it was great, like really. And it's great having a co-host. It's tough to kind of be up there by yourself. So I'd done all the stuff with the puppets, and I thought I'm gonna make it like an older talk show. And they hit me with, well, you're gonna have a computer. It's like bubble gum and a TV, and it comes from space. You know, could you imagine? I was like, oh man. And I'll tell you a funny story. When and before I even met who's puppeteering, his name's Atul Rao. He's now a professor, I believe at Mohawk. I have to double check that. But he was a great guy, and he used to write Care Bear scripts. He used to write Care Bear scripts like in the 80s, and he ended up becoming great friends. But when Snit first came, I remember like they brought it in. It was like this robot with all these animatronics. And I remember when no one was around, I took a screwdriver and I kind of loosened an arm. So I was like, okay, when he hits this thing, the arm will fall off. And, you know, like a total evil, Dr. Evil kind of a move. And it worked. Like during the air, the arm fell off. We were both laughing. And then so began like a great friendship. Like honestly, Atul and I, we still talk every now and then, and we had a great rapport because I got along with the guy. And there was a funny kind of comedy thing going on because I think he realized, yeah, like he doesn't want to work with this thing, but I have to work it, so I'm gonna make it work, and we did. You know what I mean? We ended up doing some great stuff, man, because we just got along and we would make each other laugh, and that was the thing. If I could entertain him and make him laugh, then do you know what I mean? So like I remember, like he had a fan. There was like a little fan that would turn and just like pasted on some celebrities' faces on the fan, and you'd spin the fan, and wherever it would land, we had to make stuff up, man. We had to like, you know, come up with 7 minutes. So that was Snit. His name was Atul Rao, and we got along so well. I would always try and break the third wall, as we call it. Like he's from space, but I was like, no, you're an Indian dude from Hamilton, and you drive a Toyota, and I would try like put that into the rapport, and he would laugh because he would feel like I can't comment on this, but you're making me laugh. You know, what's up with your Toyota, man? I noticed you taped your rear view mirror together with some gaffer tape. You know, like, and that was like real life, and I'd bring it up, and he'd laugh. He's like, I don't know what you're talking about. You know, so, God, that's really what you saw with me instead. It was just two guys just trying to make each other laugh, and we both had the same sense of humor, and that's really what you saw with Snit. And I think it came through. You know what I mean? Two of us trying to bust each other and just make each other laugh.
And the one thing I got to ask is pertaining to Snit, because this is one of the, this might be a secret as well, but the one thing I've always wanted to know, man, is especially growing up as a kid, I always had one of those creative minds that really kind of thought outside the box and more deep into certain situations. Was he actually in there doing that voice, or was that like pre-recorded? Was that actually you two actually talking with one another on TV, or was he pre-recording his voice, of course, for Snit?
Okay, I'm gonna pull the Wizard of Oz curtain open for you. So the setup was, our studio was this tiny little thing right by the reception desk at YTV, and there'd be windows you could look in. If you ever went into YTV at 64 Jefferson, which is now Zoomer Radio, you know, Moses' spot, you would come in the reception and you would see the Zone studio, and if we were taping live, you would see it. I remember people would be waiting for like their meetings, or guys would be delivering pizzas, and they could just stand there and watch it. And they'd be in the show. We'd shoot them too. I'd be like, "There's the pizza guy." So, yeah. So he would sit. I would be able to see him. He had those dentist teeth. You remember when dentists would come to your school and show you how to brush with the big toothbrush?
Yeah. Oh yeah.
Okay, so we had those, and we shot those teeth with the camera, and he would just make those teeth move to how he to match what he was saying. He was live right into a microphone with like a voice sort of modulation, to make it sound like that. But it was totally live back and forth. Like if the cameraman turned the camera around, you would see Atul sitting there with a headset on and making the teeth move, and his other hand would be on. I remember he had a synthesizer to make sound effects. It was also like a way to spend money. We have some budget money. Let's get a synthesizer. That's what was happening. He was literally sitting there, and it would be just a conversation between two guys.
I gotta say, that's actually really extraordinary. Me as a kid, I always thought like it was like just kind of recorded type thing, but now that you actually kind of put it together, it actually makes a lot more sense than being recorded, because I don't think the humor and the actual, I don't think it would have been as real feeling as even as a kid if it was pre-recorded.
Absolutely, and if Snit wasn't there, I would basically talk to the camera person and try and make the camera person laugh. And they would, I don't know if you remember, like I would ask a question and they would nod or they would talk, or we would talk to the guy in the master control room who was in charge of letting me know, you have 20 seconds left, and he could sometimes, he'd have a microphone and he could put himself on the air and he would bring them in. You know what I mean? It was so loose, dude. Like you could never do that anymore. You could never do that anymore on television. The advertising dollars are worth too much. You know what I mean? And my job started off as a reason for us not to show commercials, when they introduced the PJs, it was because we weren't allowed to show a certain amount of commercial time to kids. That was a CRTC thing. And what did they do? They put live hits in that to the second filled the time we needed to fill, because American shows were only, like 26 minutes. They were allowed to show tons of commercial time. We weren't. So instead of just rolling stuff in, but you could have advertisements. You know what I mean? So they put us in. We read letters. We talked about stuff. We introduced the next show. That's really what my job was about. Now, eventually, they figured out, we could do a contest sponsored by Hasbro. So, like I said, like all TV time is worth money. But for putting a guy like me on for 7 minutes live, he just would never see it anymore. And without, writers, Atul and I, or Snit, I swear to God, we'd be 5 seconds countdown into a live 3-minute segment. And it'd be like 5, 4, hey man, what do you want to talk about? Did you see a movie this weekend? All right, we're back. Hey, did you see a movie? It would be like that.
And also, aside from The Zone for a moment, I remember this show as well, and when I actually almost forgot about it, but then when I was doing my research for this interview, it popped back right into my mind. From 95 to 97, you were also one of the hosts of the Anti-Gravity Room. I was wondering if you can actually tell our listeners a story behind that show, and of course, what was it like being able to highlight video games, comics, and pop culture every week in the mid-90s?
Okay, so that show came to us because we were approached by a company called Fremantle. And what Fremantle at the time, they were just a distribution company, but they hit it big because they got the rights to distribute Baywatch all around the world. So this company came to us. They had this kid, Nick Scular, who had a comic book show on public access television in New York. And they approached YTV to do a co-production. And I guess the idea was they would film the broadcast in the States, which ended up being USA Network or Sci-Fi Channel, and then we would broadcast the show in Canada on YTV. So you had that. That's how that whole thing happened. And they came to us and said, well, you have the production know-how and this, you add this, and they said, well, we'll put 2 more hosts. We'll have one host in LA, one in New York, one in Toronto. So that's how that came about. Now, what I can tell you about that show is try and find archived footage or popular footage of comic books, video games, or movies, or that kind of thing done on, we covered Marvel and Independence, and it was a real nerd show. It was kind of like, it was just a fantastic show. And I think it's a great archive of what was going on back then, like that whole Image Comics and Spawn, and, nobody did a show on that kind of stuff at the time. So for me, I'm proud to be a part of it because, like I said, you won't find that footage. I remember we'd go to San Diego Comic-Con with the camera crew. There were no camera crews there at the time. You know what I mean? It just wasn't really covered. So you look back at that stuff, and you'll find interviews with Stanley from the '90s. You know what I mean? And Neil Gaiman, and you name it. I remember one of my first interviews with the Ultimate Warrior. In San Diego. So that show was just fantastic. We had a great team of people. Something you probably it's tough. You work in the industry. It's tough to find a tough small group of people that's really like a family, and that's what YTV was. It was a 250-person family, and then the anti-gravity room was a small part of this family. That was a little family. We all got along. The writers were fantastic. We took risks. You know what I mean? Like, if you look at those, if you find old episodes of the Anti-Gravity Room, there was really a lot of thought put into them. The execution, we would have a theme with all the intro bits between all the interviews with, say, comic people and stuff. But the theme of the show would be Midnight Cowboy, which is very, advanced sort of thinking. I thought at the time, or we spoofed so many different movies and themes. It was a really interesting show to work on, and it was really well done. And it would be tough to find that kind of footage. It'd be tough to kind of do a show like that. I was really lucky because I felt like I was part of television in a real, excuse the pun, outlaw time. We could do whatever. I felt like we could do whatever we wanted, and we kind of did.
And I gotta say, I really loved how you guys actually compiled that show and kind of made it into almost kind of like a news report that you see at 6 to 7 p.m. I remember they used to have the AGR on the move, and I remember you used to actually be dressed up in a full-on tailored suit, full-on. I don't know. I loved it, man. It was almost like news for kids, if that makes sense.
Yeah, and it was really done at a time where, I don't know if you remember, television kind of had a certain look. If you remember AGR, it was cut really fast. And the idea was, we would change the channel for you, but you'd be able to stay on the same show. So it'd be hi, I'm Phil, and I'm in LA, and then it would cut to this guy, and then, so it had that look, and it had that feel to it, super 90s, all the colors. If you look at television from the 90s, it's just everything's purple and green and yellow. Music videos, just super colorful. It was a great show. I was completely proud to be a part of that show. Really great people involved. Really great people involved in that show. Writers, you name it. Executive producers, everybody. Great show.
And also, as well, I actually read that you actually had the opportunity to actually share the stage with Topanga from Boy Meets World at the YTV Achievement Awards. I was wondering if you can actually tell our listeners the backstory behind this award ceremony, and of course, what was it like just being up there with Topanga? Because Boy Meets World was so freaking huge back in the day.
That was a big one. I think there's a bit of a story there. I guess we could talk about it now, but there were so many YTV Achievement Award shows. I remember, Robin was on one, and Glass Tiger was on one. But yeah, one year we got the other Savage Kid and Topanga from that show. They helped co-host. I do remember she had a promise ring from Lance Bass. She was showing off this diamond ring that was a promise ring from Lance Bass at Instinct. I don't think it ever went anywhere. I think it kind of dissolved, as we know. But yeah, I remember that happened with Topanga.
Yeah, I gotta say as well, I think, just kind of you said, we definitely know how that went. You know what, obviously, you know what I mean, still a phenomenal, talented singer, but just doesn't swing that way.
Yeah, God, there's a lot of talented people came through there. You mentioned Breaker High. I remember Ryan Gosling came in for an interview for Young Tarzan. Do you remember that? He did a show called Young Tarzan.
I remember that, yep.
Really good guy, normal Good, polite kid. I think mostly raised. I think it was Tennessee. He didn't talk like a Canadian. I remember he said stuff like, "Oh, you know, my mother would be fixing supper." Fixing supper. Yeah, a lot of people say through YTV. I can't even remember like all those crazy interviews I did. I look back on it and I trip because it's funny to me.
And speaking of those crazy interviews that you actually did, that was actually my next question. During your time with YTV, you had the opportunity to interview hundreds of legendary individuals from not only the music industry, but also entertainment industry as well, from like Smashing Pumpkins to Pearl Jam. I was wondering if you can actually tell our listeners a bit more about those experiences and what interviews that you conducted that are your favorites you ever done.
Favorite? Oh boy, man, I don't know favorites. I recall, you know, some of my first ones when, like, I used to also do junkets. I don't know if you know what junkets are. When a movie at the time would come out, they would invite media people from all over the world to come interview the stars for the movie, and like Fox Studio would like fly you to LA for the weekend and put you up in a hotel, and you know, you get there on Friday, you watch the movie Friday night, then Saturday you'd interview all the celebrities, and they would put them all on one floor of the hotel in rooms next to each other. You notice that with those interviews with celebrities for their movie? It's always the same. It's a different interview, the same. So you would go there, and you would sit there and interview each celebrity one by one, and they would give you the tapes. And, you know, forget the interviews with celebrities. Those experiences as a 20-year-old, you're just like, what kind of a life is this? It gives you a sense of this is not real life. You know, having these guys, you know, fly you and then, you know, put you up in a hotel, and all you have to do is go interview, you know, George. I did Batman once, and it was like George Clooney and Alicia Silverstone and you know, the guy who played Robin, I can't even remember, Chris O'Donnell, and you know what I mean? It was, so my favorites, God, they were all kind of good. Some of them, like, I know you mentioned, one time the guy from Pearl Jam came, I made him laugh. I did like an impression of Paul Stanley from Kiss, and I remember they kind of, yeah, this is one thing. It was this band, I forgot the name of the band, but it was the guitar player from Pearl Jam, and he went and did another band, and they came in to promote this stuff, and I remember they kind of sat there with their arms crossed. They looked like they were kind of going to be a difficult interview. Sometimes, you know, some people are receptive, some people aren't, you know what I mean? Some people are like real pros. But they were kind of sitting there all quiet, and then I remember I did an impression of, like a Kiss impression, and they kind of broke down, like they started laughing, like they didn't expect it. They started like really laughing. And those are the kind of interviews you sort of remember. And with interviews in general, with celebrities, it's like I like to have conversations. And the toughest part about interviews, and I would see this on these junkets, you know, people would have a list of questions, but you can't have a conversation if there's a list of questions, you know what I mean? Like, if it's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 in the order of the questions you're going to ask, the conversation can't flow naturally because you have natural questions you want to ask. So by the end, I was just going in with nothing. I would start the interview, like, how are you doing? And just start listening. Obviously, you need to talk about the movie. We'll talk about the movie. But, yeah, like, so in the end, I love doing conversational movies. Now, conversational interviews. My favorite interviews, well, there was that one from the guy with, like, a Pearl Jam. I remember Bill Gates came in once. And it's interesting seeing what these people are really like. And Bill Gates is just a straight-up nerd. My God. I tried to make him look cool, but it's like, no. He's just a nerdy, normal guy. You know what I mean? And you sort of all are. They're normal people. I remember the bass player from The Cult came in, that band, The Cult, and real cool kind of rock and roll band from the 80s and 90s, and he came in, and I remember him being so goofy, like British and goofy and joking. But then later on, I had this opportunity to like jam with him on a stage in Mississauga, Ontario, for a guitar show. As soon as the song started, this guy became the biggest rock star you've ever seen. Like that goofy English guy was gone. All of a sudden, he's like playing the bass. He's got one leg up and he's just rocking it out. And it looks cool. You're like, wow. you know, that's what was interesting with meeting these celebrities and stuff. That when they're real pros at what they do, and their personalities, they're just normal people.
And I got to say, I definitely agree because me personally, I haven't interviewed a lot of individuals like you, but I've interviewed a lot of individuals from like just music. And sometimes you would the perception you would look at them and be like, wow, this person's gonna be like really mean, but then you talk to them and you're like, wow, like you are like super nice. Like it's definitely the perception as well that some of these bands and artists give off, but a lot of them are super nice. There is some individuals, as you already know, definitely that some aren't as nice, but it's always the ones.
Yeah, have you had that? Like, oh, what a jerk. But I find it's more like their guards up, and it's tough because you're an interviewer. It's not, you know, you're not having a normal conversation with someone on the street, like, oh, nice day, you know, sitting on a bench. It's the most unnatural conversation you could have with someone. I'm a celebrity, you're an interviewer. I got to make sure I don't say this or this. You know,
and especially some interviewers as well. Some interviewers, they're obviously out to get you, and there's some where they're just be like, hey, let's have a conversation, let's help promote what you got going on. But some are definitely there's some pretty bad media out there, unfortunately.
Yeah, and some have PR people that come up to you beforehand and say, you can't mention this or this. If you do, we're walking out.
I've had that before, actually, but except in this case, it was hang up, and I was like, okay, I will not bring that up.
Yeah, we had. You can only shoot Mariah Carey from this side.
You guys actually experienced that before? That you can actually only shoot her from one side?
Mm-hmm. There's a preferred side to shoot Mariah Carey from.
I gotta say, I definitely
remember that when she comes into the radio station.
I gotta say, I definitely have that as well.
I have a good side too. Listen, I have a good side too.
I think we all have a good side, though, you know what I mean? But it is Mariah Carey, and I guess she is a multi-million-dollar individual, but it shouldn't really matter what side, especially if you're doing a radio or an interview on a TV station.
Yeah, you know, I never took the celebrity thing that seriously. I never did. I don't. I honestly, I feel guilty about it. You know, when I tell you about, you know, being a 20-year-old, being flown first class to go interview these celebrities, it's so unlike normal life. And I definitely don't look back at it like, oh man, those were the best times. They were great times, you know, but I still have a good time. Like, you know, I'm playing tennis on Wednesday. I'm going to have a great time. I never thought of it like that. You know, I do look back at it, I'm like, this is not normal. You know, this life, this celebrity life, I've always been weirdly ashamed of it. Like, God, I don't deserve this special treatment. But you do, it's crazy. You know, like free clothes. Here, take some clothes. Like, oh boy. You know? Wild stuff, man. Wild stuff.
And of course,
you're a celebrity. I saw all your awards.
I appreciate that.
Commerce and whatnot.
I gotta say, though, when it comes to the awards, though, honestly, I always tell individuals that they're great, don't get me wrong. Like, I'm happy, I'm really appreciative of them, but even if they never came, I would still work 10 times as hard as I already do, you know? At the end of the day, accolades are great, but it's just being able to do what I do is actually the best reward.
And I was so afraid. I don't want my happiness to rely upon, you know, not everybody's nice. You see that on the internet. You know, people can be bullies. Like, but I can't be beholden to that all the time. Like, do people like me? Do I look good? Do they watch me? Do they like me? I need to know that they like me. Like, I don't know. You're not going to please everybody. You know what I mean? But the more real you are, if you ever see me, come talk to me. Like, are we in the grocery store? You know, come talk to me. Like, you know, it's all good.
And I gotta say this, going back to what you said momentarily, me personally, just being able to talk to someone I grew up watching and whatnot, that to me right there is better than any award that I can hang on my wall. To just being able to have a conversation with someone like you right now this evening, that right there is the real award.
Oh man, I get it though. I can step outside myself and sort of look at the situation. Here's this guy that was on television for over 10 years for you guys. It was always there, you know, like I was always there. You could sort of depend that I would be there every afternoon, and I was like a babysitter or a big brother if you didn't have one, or just always there, you know, and that I think that was worth more than anything to people, you know. I wonder if I was on the, you know, there for a lot of kids where their parents didn't even, you know, stay married, you know, like after 5 years, you know, like I wonder. So I get it, like I totally get it. And I'm glad to have done it. I'm really proud of, you know, you guys turned out to be that last great reading generation that reads books and does normal stuff. You know what I mean?
And the one thing I do want to ask you as well, while I have you here, is aside from being a PJ on YTV and whatnot, you are also in a band as well by the name of Raised in Black, and I do want to shed some light on this phenomenal band, and of course yourself, along with your 4 other members. I was wondering if you can actually tell us a bit more about this group, and of course, where can we actually check out your music? That way we can, like, instead of watching you on TV, kind of hear you on a record.
Okay, so you know, when I quit YTV, I got to tell you, I quit because I don't think that there was anything more I could do with that job in that place, and I was still young. I was still kind of 30 years old, and I decided, well, I'm gonna, you know, get an agent and go to LA and do that Hollywood thing, and I did. I acted here for a little bit. I was in the Ladies' Man movie and an episode of, oh my God, what was that Tia Carrere
Relic Hunter.
movie where she was like Indiana Jones? I did that. Do you remember that one?
Relic Hunter, yeah, I used to watch that as well. Phenomenal show. It's sad it only lasted a couple seasons, though.
Yeah, well, they shot that by the Toronto Zoo, and I played like a Colombian soldier that gets captured by Tia Carrere. She hits me over the head, you know. Like I did a bit of acting, got an agent, went to LA. Now here is this guy that was like a kids TV person in Canada, and now I'm in LA. Nobody knows who I am. Man, I just basically. I did not do any movies or television. I jumped at everything else that I could jump at. And one of the first things I did was join this band. And it was only because I had stomped in to interview in Canada, like, years before, and one of the guys I became friends with became one of my friends out in L.A. when I moved there. And he had a band called Raised in Black. It was a goth industrial band, you know, like a Nine Inch Nails band. They just kicked out the guitar player, and they said, hey, you wanna come tour? And I was like, sure, you know, I didn't know. Like, I was 33 years old. I wanted to be in Guns N' Roses when I was 17, but that didn't happen. I ended up in kids TV. But now I'm 33, I think I was, and they said, hey, you wanna come on tour? And next thing you know, I was on the road for 2.5 months with five guys, and we went from L.A. to Montreal, back to L.A., last show in Hawaii. You know, I kind of got hooked on I can do whatever I want, you know, like all these things I wanted to do. So, yeah, I joined that band, and I'm still the guitar player in that band. Whenever we get together, that's where you can listen to it. This band, when I joined them, they already had 4 albums. You know, they already had a following. So I'm really just the guitar player, the touring guitar guy. But we just came out with a record. Like my picture's on the record. You know, it's RAZED in Black. You look it up on Google, and the music's all there. The videos are there. And if you find old live videos from, say, 2002, 2003, that's me on stage. You know, and what an experience, man. And I'll tell you, when I was out in L.A. for that 8 years I lived there. I lived in Hollywood, dude. And this is the stuff people don't know. I joined a band. I was part of this reality show. It was called Style Me with Rachel Hunter. People trying to be like fashion stylists. I got kicked out after the first episode. But then when I got back to LA, I started a fashion line. I ended up being Little Mama's fashion stylist while she was on the show America's Best Dance Crew. You know what I mean? And I got into clothes. I was making clothes, dude. I'm on the Warner Brothers set in her trailer getting her clothes ready. You know, but she's shooting her judging bit, like she was a judge on that show. You know, it was a wild time. I did that. I looked at American Apparel for a bit. I was taking hip-hop dance classes from Justin Timberlake's choreographer in North Hollywood, this place called Millennium. Now, this is the place that, like, Britney Spears would let the entire place at if she'd get ready to tour with her dancers. Like, this is like a legendary place. I did it all. I had a fashion show. I was basically making these heavy metal jackets before you saw punk studs on, like, phone cases. I was doing that in 2002. You know, I kind of explored everything when I was out there. That's really the untold stuff. But that's how I got in that band, and a bunch of other things when I lived in the States for almost a decade.
And I gotta say as well, the album Damage that you guys released is absolutely phenomenal, man. The one song I really like is actually There Goes My Head.
Yeah, we played that live. Yeah, Ramel is part of that band. Ramel is like the prince of that band. He does everything. He plays everything. The guy's a genius. Ramel is that guy, and we sort of relate to each other in this way. We're kind of both do-it-yourself kind of guys. Like, if in my house, if the toilet breaks, I'm fixing it. If it needs to be replaced, I'm replacing it. You know what I mean? He solders his own electronics in his guitars. He's a brilliant, just a genius guy. And can do music. And he cuts hair and he does all kinds of stuff. Like, the guy's a genius. Really lucky. And those guys are like my brothers now. Like, you know, it's tough to meet new friends, you know, later on in your life, like at 33, but these guys forever like a family to me, you know. And that's that band. It's a fantastic experience. Who the heck gets that chance at 33 after having a kid's, you know, television career to join like a 9 Inch Nails band? And all of a sudden now I'm a touring guitar player. You know, what a fantastic, like, I'm really lucky that I got to lead the life I did. I'm still lucky, and then the best stuff is still ahead. You know, I don't know what it is, but I don't care. You know?
And also, I do know we're jumping ahead in the timeline a little bit, but like you said, you've done so much stuff that if we were here to cover all this, we'd probably be here all day, right into the morning. But in the last year, in 2021, you actually had the opportunity to actually repraise your role as PJ Phil, where you actually became spokesperson for YTV's brand new, new apparel collection. I was wondering if you can actually tell our listeners a bit more about that, and of course, what was it like being back on a YTV set after all these years?
Yeah, so that was Retro Kid did all the old school T-shirts and stuff, which is great. Yeah, there was like a whole, you know, being back. It's very different. First of all, like I told you, I mean, YTV got bought out by Shaw. It became it became part of Chorus. It became part of a giant corporation. And being back, it's kind of the same. It's kind of different, you know. You're back in front of the camera, and those things never leave you, you know. But I kind of felt like the old guy, like, you know, the Godfather is back, man. Let me show you kids how to do it. But I'm proud to say that I still have it. You know, I think they realize, well, wow, he's kind of good, he's fun. But it's tough to not care when you're up. Like the trick to that job is like you just can't care. You can't care about, oh, do I look good? Do I look bad? You know what I mean? It's like, if I have fun, you guys will have fun. That's it.
And I gotta say as well, I actually looked at that apparel, and I remember actually grabbing myself, a Video Arcade Top 10 shirt, and honestly, I felt like I was like 10 years old again, man, with an N64, just like being able to have that logo kind of like on a shirt, something that you watched like every single week, and I can't count how many times I sent a letter in to try to get on that show, but unfortunately I was never that good to actually get on it.
I understand that. It's tough to get on. But you know what? It's great. You get, like, it's amazing that a T-shirt or a sweatshirt or whatever, that V&A sweatshirt, you put it on, and it's just something you can't pay for. Just the feelings you get. You know, when you're recalling like a great time in your life, man. Like a great time in your life.
I gotta say, it definitely was. When I wear it, I have a few people that when I'm out and about be like, "Yo, man, I remember that show. I'll buy that shirt off your back right now." And I'm like, "Dude, you can get it online." Like it's like you don't want the sweaty shirt. You should get it brand new. Like.
But you see it work. That's what I mean. Like, and then when other people see it, they're brought back to this great time, right? It's like magic. It's like, oh my God, like you're brought back to this fantastic time.
Yeah, like, the people actually thought that I got it like kind of like personally made, like I kind of like took the logo off the internet and printed on a shirt. And I was like, no, I'm like PJ Phil, like actually is a spokesperson for it. Like look it up. And then they like brought it up on their phone. They're like, wait, the PJ Phil? I'm like, no, there's only one. So yeah, most definitely it's PJ Phil. Like, then when they saw it, they actually bought it like right in front of me, and they're like, sweet, thanks, man. And I was like, yeah, no problem.
That's amazing. That's amazing stuff. Yeah, God, I'm happy to be part of it. I have a lucky life. It still goes on, you know. It still goes on.
And
it brings a smile to my face. You're smiling right now too, you know.
I honestly, I know you're a fellow interviewer, so you can probably sense when someone's smiling. So yes, most definitely.
Yeah, no, I get it, and I'm glad to be a part of it. Absolutely, you know, absolutely. It was such a great time. It was a great time.
And one of the last YTV questions I do have, because of course I know you get probably asked this one a lot too, but if they were ever to call you up and be like, yo, you know what? Because obviously the '90s, I don't know how that really is, because the '90s are a part of the past, but somehow they seem to be bringing everything back from the '90s. Do you think if YTV was to call you and be like, look, we need the OG PJ Phil back on the zone, would you actually take up that job, or would you probably just leave
man, that's a tough one, you know. Like I take a job, would I do that same thing? It's can you get back in? Like, would it mean the same? I don't know. You know what I mean? It was such a you couldn't do that again. You know, it was a real product of its time. What I would like to do, I'll tell you, I think people need it again. I'll tell you this: I think there's money in curation. I think there's way too much stuff out there, and everybody needs that big brother to tell them what to listen to and what to do again. You know, just to make life easier on you, you know? I really do. I think that's missing. I think these countdown video shows with someone talking in between, where you feel like someone is actually listening or someone's there at the station with you. Radio never lost that, you know? TV has. TV feels like it got taken over by a robot. Like, you know what I mean? I watch, let's say, I won't name names, but let's say there's like a television station that's supposed to show a certain kind of programming, whether it's outdoor living or country music or something, and you watch, and it's just has nothing to do with what that channel's supposed to be about, right? It's just reruns of The Office for hours on end.
Or much music. Well, much now, unfortunately. I guess it's all Simpsons. Don't get me wrong. I love The Simpsons.
Yeah.
I love The Simpsons, but I want music videos.
Yeah, let's just call it all the Simpsons all the time. You know, like, so I think if someone redid that, maybe, but I definitely don't know. You know, if I redid television, I would do it from the roof of my house. I would send out a pirate television station signal that you could only pick up with an antenna if you lived in the neighborhood. And I would start television over from scratch again. Do you know what I mean? Like, just the internet, all that, just like blow it up and we start again, you know? And there's a TV station and only 50 people get it and we try this all over again.
Honestly, I'm not going to lie to you. And I'm not just saying that because the man himself is on my radio station, but I definitely agree with that, man. Like, you know what I mean? At the end of the day, I would watch that.
With other people, yeah, I would, this is what you do, right? Like, the only people that get the stations in the neighborhood. So the news, the advertisements, everything is, you know, it just is about that area. And you start in the morning, and at midnight you sign off with the Canadian anthem, and it's bars and tone all night. And,
I can't remember how many times as a kid.
I
can't remember how many times as a kid that Canadian anthem woke me up at like 5:30, 6 in the morning when the station came back on.
From the bars and tone. I think people need that again. Too much, man. Everything, you can get anything you want whenever you want. You know?
I definitely agree. Everything's at our fingertips now. Like, there's even social media sites that I'm trying to get into for my business, and I just can't figure it out because everything's evolving and changing so quickly. There's some things I'm completely mind blown at.
I think you offer people a simpler face or a simpler version to do whatever it is you're doing out there on the internet. I think people would love it. You know, I think people would love it. I think, like I said, I think there's money in curation. I think people need someone who knows what they're doing, or someone that they trust or they look up to just whittle it all down and say, this is what we're doing. And that's it.
And I have to ask first and foremost, what is next for yourself, PJ Phil? Like, is there anything we missed during this interview? Anything else you still want to touch on, talk about, let our listeners and of course your fans know? Will we still have you here live on the air?
Self-promotion. I just opened up a Cameo account. I just started that going. You know what? I recently my fiance and I, she's awesome. I have to say that on the radio. She's awesome. We both got into wrestling. We both really got into wrestling about 3 months ago. And I've been talking to someone in town, and I might start wrestling or something. I'm going to be involved this Saturday in Toronto here it's called Super Kick Wrestling. It's this Saturday, the 24th, and I'm just doing a little bit of a special appearance. But you know, maybe I might start wrestling. This is PJ Phil. This is what I think. Big wrestling. Why don't I wrestle? How crazy that is, but I'm thinking about it, man. Why not? Or what else am I doing?
I gotta say, I think that would be phenomenal, man. You know what I mean? You have the look, you have the posture, and honestly, you can go right out there as a rocker, man. You know what I mean? You're like right as one of the band members, go on out and just give her, man. Honestly, I was seeing a few pictures on your Instagram of you at wrestling shows and whatnot, man. Me personally, I'm a wrestling fan as well, and you know what I mean? Honestly, there's nothing wrong with going to wrestling events and wanting to be a wrestler, man. Definitely go for it.
Oh, no. Wrestling's the best, dude. After being cooped up for 2 years, you know, we went and checked out wrestling. I'm like, this has everything. You know, people don't realize what wrestling really is. It's pantomime theater. You know, and what that is, it's like, you know, like a kid, the fox and the fiddle, and the bad guy comes out, and the kids are going, boo, and, you know, you talk to the audience. You know, it has that. It has that. The show isn't just about these guys in a ring. It's about you as an audience being involved in, like, the whole thing. And it has everything. It's good guys versus bad, and there's improv, and there's music, and great athleticism, and danger, and I don't know, man. I don't know what it is, but I'll say, like, I'm sitting here going, this is what people need. This. It's fun. It's fantastic. It's fantastic showmanship and vaudeville and whatever you want to call it. It's great. It's great, dude. And yeah, so it's like God, you know, just because I'm a celebrity, and it's weird. It's like, yeah, hey, you want to try wrestling? Nobody gets that chance. I might take advantage, you know, like, yeah. They seem to think I might be able to wrestle, so you never know. We might try building a storyline up starting this Saturday, but, you know, wrestling, I don't know if it's on anyone's radar. I don't know if it's the next biggest thing, but I'll tell you, it's what I'm doing, and I'm having a great time with it. Like, we love it.
And I gotta say as well, I follow you on Instagram, so if you do build up a story and whatnot, and of course you do actually wrestle, and I see the post, I'll actually make a trip out to Toronto. I'm only about 3.5, 4 hours away. I'm just in between Kingston and Ottawa, so I'll definitely make that trip.
We drove by you just yesterday. I was on my way back from Montreal from F1, and I drove by Prescott. I was like, that's where Outlaw Radio is.
It's actually a very small town, and I'm sort of, honestly, a lot of people, even when I go to Toronto like every 3 months, it's kind of like me and my wife's kind of surprise getaway. It's far away from home, but not too far away, just to escape and get a hotel for a couple of days.
Listen, I will invite you personally. If we develop a storyline and I somehow manage to get my 51-year-old body in a wrestling ring, I will let you know, and you will be there.
Hey, sounds good. And if you get thrown out of the ring, I'll catch you.
Yeah, you better.
But while we're on the topic of wrestling, I have to ask, man, because of course you just got into wrestling a few months ago, you yourself and your fiance.
Yeah.
If you don't mind me asking, man, what wrestlers are you really taking a liking to right now? Because I gotta say that the possibilities are endless with AEW, TNA, WWE, Ring of Honor. Like the options are just endless nowadays.
Yeah, the options are endless. Really, it feels like It's weird, dude. Like, honestly, my fiance and I are kind of, there's so much to learn about wrestling. You can't kind of just start watching modern day wrestling without going back to the beginning and just knowing how we even got here. Do you know what I mean? And we're even studying territories, old wrestlers. You know, we grew up, like, everybody grew up with wrestling. I wasn't as into it when I was younger than I am now, but I remember Blackjack Mulligan and Jake the Snake and Ricky the Dragon Steamboat. You know, everybody has it in their lives at some point. Like, their uncles were into it, or their family, or, you know, it's really weird. I'm still learning it. You know, WWE still feels like the only show in town. You know what I mean? It's a crazy time for wrestling. I don't know if you're watching, like, Vince McMahon stepping down and Sasha Banks walking off. Like, it's really neat time for wrestling. I kind of want to see, this is what now that I'm getting involved in, like, I love local wrestling, and now I'm getting involved, and I think it's time for wrestling to kind of go through that thing that skateboard manufacturing companies did. You know, there was, like, 3 big ones, and then all of a sudden, these little independent skateboard companies just started coming out. I think I see the wrestling that I'm seeing that I'm impressed with is like local stuff, dude. Like in Pittsburgh, you know, these like little guys that are trying to make it happen. That's the really interesting, fun stuff. And I just wish I knew the storylines with these micro territories. You know what I mean? That's where I'd like to step in and do something. Because, like, the thing about WWE is you have to invest 3 hours twice a week to really know what's going on. That's where I think it's kind of tough.
I definitely agree, especially as an adult as well, because like 6 hours, not like in a week. And a lot of people have jobs and whatnot. I honestly think they shouldn't have made Raw 3 hours. Like, I find Raw was good with 2 hours, because at the end of the day, the 3 hour show is pretty well, the last hour is mainly commercials anyways.
And these days, forget about even getting someone to do 2 hours. You know, like, forget it. That's like, so, like, I'm thinking that way. I think wrestling needs to change. Maybe I'll get involved in that. I think Raw needs to be taken down to 10 minutes or 12 minutes. Do you know what I mean? Like, it would be great if you could just watch something for 12 minutes, and then you're caught up on all the storylines for this small little wrestling company. So when you go and see them at the end of the month, you know the 3 or 4 storylines. You know what I mean?
And I remember the score as well. Like, I don't think it's a score anymore. I think it's like Sportsnet 360 or something like that. They had this show called the WWE Experience. It was like a 1 hour show on Sundays that would recap the entire week's events. I don't know if that's still going on or not, but I remember that was the best when I was younger, man, because if you couldn't sit through all the commercials and all the talking, or you had to go to bed early, you could watch that like 1 hour broadcast and be like, wow, I just learned like everything that happened in the past month.
Yeah, I honestly think wrestling has the potential to be like the next whatever, where, you know, like, you'll see like the Kardashians showing up, and you know what I mean? Like, it has the potential to be like that. They're the greatest thing in the world.
But, Phil, I have to ask first and foremost, man, this is the time in the interview quickly, right before I wrap things up, that I give a chance for the individual that does slide into the radio station airwaves, just like a chance to give, like, shout-outs to whomever they want to give shout-outs to. But, of course, man, your social media handles, that way our listeners can stay updated on everything PJ Fresh Phil if they're not already doing so.
Yeah, dude, I'm bad with my social media. I'm like, my fiance gets on me. Why don't you post something? He's just old school, dude. But yeah, my Instagram's at PJ Fresh Phil. Yeah, I'm trying to be better with that stuff. I'm funny enough. I'm kind of a private dude. Like, I'm old school. I don't want people to know what I'm eating.
I gotta say, I definitely agree. If it wasn't for my radio station, personally, I probably wouldn't be on social media either. I'd probably just be rogue, but when it comes to business, sometimes you gotta have the social media and try your best to keep up with the times at least.
Absolutely. And I promise I'm gonna post more. But yeah, at PJ Presto on Instagram and on Twitter. Like I said, if you have a crazy amount of money, you don't know what to spend it on, I opened up a Cameo account.
And I gotta say as
Oh,
well,
that's good.
even though I had the opportunity to talk to you for an hour, I think I might just give myself a cameo for the heck of it, man. Because at the end of the day, it's still pretty cool to be able to have just a cameo, right? The interview is cool, but a cameo would be even cooler as well.
Oh my God, I'll put work into it. I'll do whatever you want. I'll put on pants way too small for me if you want. I will work. I will work for your cameo, sir.
I gotta say, man, and I gotta say first and foremost, Phil, just before we part ways, man, thank you so much for just giving us a bit of your time here this evening and just talking with myself, your fans, and of course the radio station's listeners. And just, I'm pretty sure I could say this on behalf of everybody that was a '90s kid in Canada. Just thank you, man, for just years of memories. I know we spoke briefly before the interview, and you said you guys didn't really know what you were really doing then, but definitely, just thank you for actually giving us something to look forward to after school, man. Because me, I didn't have the best upbringing, and realistically, television was kind of my escape from a really terrible life, man. So just being able to watch you every single day after I got home from school was definitely a blessing and definitely an escape until 6 p.m. when, of course, you, PJ Phil, actually had to take the opportunity to leave for the day.
Oh man, that means a lot, really. And yeah, that goes along the lines. Like, we were big brothers and sisters to a lot of people. And we were just there, you know. And I get it. Like, I'm so glad I was there for you guys. Really, honestly, and thank you so much.
Hey, you are most certainly welcome, Phil. Hopefully down the line, you know, we could actually meet in person and whatnot. But for now, definitely have yourself a wonderful night. And again, thank you so much for this amazing hour.
Thank you so much. Shout out to Prescott, Ontario, man.
Hey, and definitely shout out to Toronto as well, man. Thank you so much, Phil. I'm pretty sure we definitely shall talk again soon.
All right, thanks so much. Immortal.